Welcome to today's conversation. I'm joined by Eric Oliver, president of Angelsmith. Eric, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
You've been running Angelsmith for almost 25 years. I'm sure you've seen some twists and turns or shifts along the way. Tell us about the biggest shift or scariest shift you had to make in those 25 years.
Oh man, in 25 years, there's lots of scary stuff happening. I would start with starting the business. I started the business in 2001,
Okay.
right before the internet bubble burst. I was at a big agency job beforehand.
Okay.
I left and started Angelsmith with four other guys. It was five partners, three of my best friends, my brother and my cousin. There were two guys on the digital side and three on the film side. Our idea in starting the agency is we wanted both, film and digital under one roof, which in 2001 was revolutionary. And then the internet bubble burst and we couldn't break our directors. We were getting undercut by Ridley Scott. So the film side died off, but the digital side stayed. That was the first big one. The economic downturn, real estate, all of that. COVID, another one, everybody having to rethink everything. It seems reliably that things need to get reinvented. I'm excited about what comes out of each one. If you can make it, if you're versatile and you're willing to try, just be like, okay, what's working? What do we do next? And try stuff out, keep working. You'll usually come through them with a lot of knowledge that sort of then informs the next 5, 10 years
Sure.
that you're
Yep.
doing.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, my agency, Go Beyond, was born during that 2008, 2009, recession and real estate issue there. So I know
Right.
exactly what you're talking about. You just have to constantly be not necessarily reinventing yourself, but reinventing how you do things or go to market. Were there any shifts inside the business related to those shifts? Did you have to change how you went to market? Obviously, you got rid of film, focused on digital. What were some of the other things that you had to change?
Yeah, well, on that front, let's talk about COVID, what's come out of that, and
Okay.
where we are now. I'm changing not necessarily how we service clients, but definitely how we position the agency and find new clients. And I will say, so one of the things is, and this would be advice to any agency owner or anybody working in an agency at this point, I made the classic mistake of getting into this, having no idea what I'm doing in terms of business, just knowing, MarTech and marketing. We were lucky to get tons of business off of referrals. We never advertised. We never had a formal lead generation system or anything like that for 20 years. Things started shifting before COVID and became much more apparent during COVID. People are too busy now to do referrals. We have great client retention. Clients love working with us. Referrals have dried up. I'm building our sales process. We launched it in
Nice.
2005, created a formal sales process to
Right.
target two customer segments for us. We'd gone through the work of prioritizing them, gone through the work of automating them, gone through the work of all of that stuff. And that would be, I think, the biggest change and sort of immediate advice that I would give is if you don't have a formal sales process set up, like start building that now. The days of word of mouth carrying agencies are long gone.
I could not agree more. Having it formalized, a process to follow, making sure your pipeline's always full, right? Like that's things get stressful when the pipeline isn't full. And it is
Yeah.
great when people are referring. Let me ask you, when it comes to referrals and SEO, I have a theory. Sometimes clients don't want you to get bigger. They don't want their competitors to find you. They don't want to let their secret out. Sometimes it's hard just to get a Google review. Clients that have worked with me for years and love what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, can you leave me a review on Google? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then they never do it.
I think there's a couple of things. Everybody is busier with more stuff to
Yeah.
deal with. Everybody's being asked to do more for less. There's all these tools like AI and all that, and that's great. But everybody, like our clients included, are being asked to deal with all that stuff. And I think their bandwidth is limited, and they just a lot of times can't be bothered. Even if they love you and they want to taking time out of their day is difficult, is
Yeah.
hard for them to do. But I do think, specifically when you get to SEO, I do think you are correct that particularly when you're dealing with regional competitors, like people don't want other people in their region to be able to do it. We encounter this not just with SEO, even in wine, that we've had a couple of wineries that are kind of like, who else are you working with? It's
Right.
interesting. Wine is very insular, so they want to know that you're working with other wineries. They won't work with you if you're not in wine
Right.
at all. But they want to know you've done exactly for them in their market the exact same thing that you're pitching them. But at the same time, they don't want you doing it right then for anybody else, you
Right.
know.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it can be a challenge. Depending on your industry, it can be challenging, but I definitely think you're onto something there.
We've offered exclusivity. If we work with you in Charlotte, North Carolina, I won't work with one of your competitors. Will
Right.
I work with somebody who does what you do in Raleigh, North Carolina? Yes, I will, because you guys aren't really competing against each other. You're local. But yeah,
Right.
I run into that all the time where folks, like you said, perfect. They want to know that you have worked with their type of company and understand their pain points, but they don't want you to work with anybody else at the same time. It's an
Right.
interesting thing. You
Yeah.
mentioned in 2005 establishing sales processes for two of your target industries. What led you to deciding on target industries? And if you want to share what those industries are and just
Yeah.
some of your thoughts around those.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been moving toward this. The industries we worked with, we were just following. My wife and I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area and we lived there
Mhm.
for 10 years. When we moved there, we're like, wow, we're close to a bunch of wineries. Why don't we see if we can work with wineries? We worked our way into that industry and that became a vertical we worked in. We kind of fell into health and fitness, which is our primary vertical right now. And it was 10 years
Mhm.
ago, we got the opportunity to work with Club Pilates. They were expanding. They were going through a big growth phase. They had 200 locations and they wanted to get to 600 and they needed to get there fast. And they needed an infrastructure that could support it. They needed a team that understood what they were going to be doing in terms of marketing and make sure that everything dovetailed with that. So that was an awesome engagement for us. We worked with them
Yeah.
for years. In fact, they're technically still a client, but it was a ton of fun, and I learned lots in it. And the franchise industry and the franchisors, working with franchisors, is such a weird, specialized little place that
Mhm.
it was fun getting to know and understand it. We did that for them about 10 years ago. Things kind of progressed. We still were working with a mix of clients, but that also led to working with some other fitness clients doing similar things. About 3 years ago, we worked with the Now Massage. They had 4 corporate locations and were beginning the franchising process model. It's such a fun time, like a
Yeah.
startup environment. Everybody's jamming. You can't go fast enough. It's go,
Mhm.
go, go. For me, it's gratifying to work with companies because it's you get to really shape what their future is, and everybody is pulling in the same direction as everyone is in the same boat. You really have to understand this is the technology you're working with, this is the nuance to how your franchise operates, this
Mhm.
is how much freedom you want to give your franchisees. There's so many things to kind of delve into and dig into. It's fun, gratifying, exciting. So when we started looking at, like, okay, we need to do a sales process, we need to have a formal sales process. We can't market to everybody in the whole world. We know we need to specialize. We know we need to speak to specific audiences. I love working with these companies, and we've got a good client roster and a good logo
Yeah.
field that we can show. Okay, it makes sense to go after these guys. And then in the beginning of the process, going into it, I realized we one of the first learnings in doing this sales process was, hey, guess what? Presidents, owners, COOs, and CMOs are really tough to talk to and
For
get on
sure.
the phone. Wow, genius. So actually what we did, it was going to take longer. We realized, like, this is going to take way longer than we thought. Like, it's going to work. We know the process works. It's just we wanted to scale faster. So one of the
Sure.
other things that we did was, okay, well, what about on the other side of these guys? We're working with franchisors mostly. What about the franchisees? They need local SEO, Yelp advertising, SEM, review management. They need these things just as much. If their franchisor isn't supplying it, or if they're in a growing franchise operation, then normally, the crunches of the world, they pay for marketing for everybody. But growing franchises usually pass that on to their franchisees. So then we're like, okay, well, then let's start reaching out to individuals. We have one
Okay.
sales process targeting the franchisor, top level COO, president, owner, CMOs, and the others are owners of individual franchises or individual locations that just need that help direct. And
Okay.
one's a volume play, one's a long-term play.
When you end up working with a franchisor who had 4 corporate locations and then they were looking to really get started with franchising, seems
Mhm.
like you probably had a great experience from Club Pilates, so you knew what they were going to need.
Mhm.
But when they're so in kind of that early stages, are you ever scared or did you run into like just kind of like rampant scope creep where they're like, oh, we forgot about this. We need to do this. And then it just ends up being like this crazy. I mean, clearly you're a high energy guy. I like it when we're going. You also just want to make sure we know where we're going. Did you run into that?
Well, that's a great question. The way we addressed scope creep was by getting into retainer agreements. With the retainer agreements, you buy off on, we look at it, there's all these people doing fractional CFO, fractional CMO. Another way we fit into this is to be their fractional web team, their expansion task force. We embed with them, we get to know them. They've got their
Oh, wow.
dedicated project manager. We don't embed physically, but we are, they have one
Mhm.
project manager. We're a small agency anyway. We're like 5 people. So, we're lean and
Yeah.
mean when it comes to this stuff, but
Yeah.
they have the project manager. They get to know them. Everybody gets to know the business really, really intimately. And so that's to the benefit of them. But when we look at, the retainer agreements that we get into is if you get X number of hours, if X number of hours that you commit to, you get a discount on our standard agency rate. If you don't commit to any hours, no problem. We're happy to work with you on a time and materials basis, but you're getting this, a higher rate. If you commit to various tiers of hours with us, we'll bump down your rates. And if you go over, your time is locked in at those rates. So we bill you at the discounted rate. That turned out great for companies in that growing experience because, like you say, it is almost impossible to actually scope these things out. They're going through so much change that you need to pivot and change priorities. So that was how we addressed the scope creep issue by offering the retainer model and giving them access to a complete web team that is just plug and play that and without a long term, we don't lock them into years or whatever. They can move up and down. We ask for 30 days. So they're going to
Mhm.
work with us if they want to work with us.
Yeah.
But I will say the defect of this, the one thing that we do run into, or I did run into, we've run into it at a couple of times, is particularly when we're dealing with growing companies. There's that startup phase where it's just hair on fire, everybody's go, 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 go. At some point, we will get them to a place where they can take a breath and they're like, okay, we've got this, things are humming. Inevitably, that's usually when they bring in a new C-suite, a COO or a president. And at that point, that's when a person comes in and looks, what are we doing spending all this money with Angelsmith? They haven't been there for the trenches like crazy work. I can show them 3 pages of deliverables we've given you over the last year. This is
Mhm.
where your money went, and this is why you guys are in business. But they don't want to hear that usually. A lot of times
Yeah.
that transition is a difficult one to go, it's challenging to navigate through. We do it and have done it successfully a number of times, but
Sure.
it is the challenge that I've got and the thing that I'm still trying to figure out in terms of customer services when we do that transition, how to avoid them having the initial sticker shock or bad feeling
Yep.
or something like we've been investing all of this. How do I make them feel? How do I make them feel good
Mhm.
from the get go? These
Yeah.
people are coming in with a red marker,
Yeah.
want to circle something, have a quick win. A lot of times they have their own team.
Oh,
How
yeah.
do you bridge that? Usually we've done it successfully by, I understand you're wondering, not quite
Mhm.
seeing the value, and I'll go through why this is all the value we've delivered. That works, but there's still that lingering feeling of, oh, we spent a lot of money with these guys.
Yeah.
And that,
That's a tough spot as an agency. If you solve that problem, let me know because when somebody new comes in, they want to leave their mark. They're already coming in with the red pen. Like they are looking for things to change. So if you're going to be one of the bigger line items on their budget, they're it's I admire you going through it and doing those dog and pony shows. And hey, if it only saves, a couple out of 10, then that's still great. But it's a hard thing to do. You want to make your imprint. I think you're onto something. They have their own teams. It's a fact of agency life. That is a risk for an agency whenever that happens. But there could
yeah.
be benefits. In 5 years, they go be the CM or the people you worked with go to another franchise and they pull you in, right? So there's benefits to some of that too.
That actually happened. That was another reason why we'd coast on referrals, because we'd grow a company to a certain point
Hmm.
and then the company would transition. People would move on, and then they're at another place
Yep.
that's doing the same thing. Yeah, I love being in those situations.
I think COVID made this different, right? It is harder for people to do referrals because we don't interact in person as much. We're back out, but a lot of those networkings and conferences, people aren't back to doing that at the same level. I have no data to support this, but with so much work from home, there might not be people changing jobs as much either. I don't know if that's true or not, but just hearing you talk, it sounds like that might be the case.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be. And I also think that COVID spawned a billion agencies with the rise of automation,
Mhm.
AI, educational products. Everybody's at home in
Yeah,
COVID going, what do I do to make money now?
right.
Do I start I'm seeing educational, how I can start an agency and be doing lead gen for people. The flood of new agencies is challenging. And all of those agencies are trying to talk to your same party. So the flood of information is really challenging as
Yeah.
well. It's really hard to break through that. One of the things I've been thinking about recently, I've been looking at conversion rates with email, cold email, regular email, cold calls, LinkedIn outreach, automations, all
Yep.
those kinds of things. The fundamentals are there. You continue doing those. But one of the things
Mhm.
that I am wondering about is like, at times, no matter our pedigree or our client list, I feel like one voice among many. So I'm looking at are, okay, what are the technologies that we're not using? What is the technology
Mhm.
that I'm not, what are the channels, not technologies, but the channels where I'm not one of a billion other agencies doing the same thing? I'm exploring different ones. I'm looking at CTV. If I could
Okay.
get clever about geofencing the whales, things like that, where it's like, okay, not a million agencies are playing in these ponds yet.
Right.
So what can we do to
Yeah.
stand out?
And it sounds like you've got the two sides of your business, one being the franchisor and one being the franchisee. It sounds like on the franchisor side, those deals are going to be bigger. They might be worth a top 100 approach, right? Like just picking 100 and kind of taking that whole, I'm going to blank on the name of the author, but like the sales machine, I believe is the name of the book, where it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you just check and really just because I love that idea about geofencing and advertising to them, reaching out to that top 100 and getting personalized with the messaging that could work for sure.
yeah.
It's hard to stand out.
There's so much chatter. Everybody's on LinkedIn sending emails. How do you get noticed?
Have you had any channels that have worked better than others?
No, I mean, like I haven't launched experimental ones yet. So
Hmm.
we've been focusing on the fundamentals. We've been
Yeah.
focusing on cold email, retargeting, cold email
Hmm.
paired with retargeting, LinkedIn follow up, automate as much as I can, but layer in as much
Yep.
individualization as I
Yep.
can, LinkedIn outreach, thought leadership,
Try
the
it all. Yeah.
fundamentals at this point.
Yeah. Digital agencies, no matter what kind, typically grow through referrals and networking. It's interesting. We do digital marketing for companies, but really up until now, we haven't really needed a ton of it, right? It was really more around referrals and networking, and we're definitely having to, the cobbler's son needs some shoes now, right? We got to
Yep.
eat our own dog food, so to speak. We're doing the same thing, testing new things and seeing what works, iterating. It's fun, but it is a new stage for sure.
Yeah.
Everything we've been talking about has led up to it. Do you think client expectations have changed, right? So, like you said, they've got way more choices now. They've got, well, there's a billion and one agencies out there. Do you think expectations have changed?
That's a great question. The expectations seem to be consistent, right? They
Get me
want
results.
everything in the world. I want this and that, more of this, less of that, all of that. I wanted it yesterday. I want more tomorrow. So it's kind of like the expectations in many ways haven't changed in my mind, but the trust and the openness, I think, is one thing that has changed a lot. Because
Mhm.
again, with so many players coming in and so many people, and they get so talk about like the SEO space. I'm sure you've encountered this. You optimize a website, get them ranking for specific keywords. Somebody comes by and says like, "Oh, hey," and sends a screenshot of like the page speed score or something like that, and they're like, "Hey, see, you're not ranking well." You have to go into the whole
Oh yeah.
like, okay, so page speed is actually not what they rank against, and there's all
Uh,
these other things, and don't be misled by this, and
oh
this is
yeah.
where you are. You have to go through all that stuff, and there's so many people pitching. I think the trust level. I think in the past there was. I mean, there's longer. past, like the beginning of my career, there was a lot of, hey, you guys are doing voodoo. I have no idea what it is, but I'll trust you and just show me the results and it's awesome. Now there's still people saying like, oh, it's voodoo, but there's all these people saying that they do voodoo. And I don't know if that
Right.
I've been burned before and I don't know if I trust them.
Yeah.
Everybody's been burned. Most of my
Yeah.
clients have been burned. You're having to build trust with them.
Yeah. Back when we started in '08, you mentioned SEO to somebody, they didn't know, the business owner, they didn't know what it was. Like they
Right.
legitimately didn't know what it was. Now they've fired 4 SEO companies before we get a chance to talk to them. We talk about that all the time. We're constantly paying for the sins of others. Quite frankly, there are some shady actors out there, right?
Yeah. I wonder how many of these people do you think, like both in the lead generation space and in the local SEO space, their business model is predicated on can I get somebody and hold on to them for 3 months before they realize that they're not going to get any results and then move on? It
I don't
seems
think
like,
there's a lot of that on the lower end of the market.
yeah.
I don't think most people go into business like that, but I
Mhm.
do think some, and really it's honestly, what I find anyway, it's usually the bigger players, the ones who are kind of bigger, more national. It's a boiler room. They're
Yeah.
really a sales organization, not really worried about getting their clients results. It's just about make as many phone calls as you can, get them sold. Like I got my neighbor here, his daughter graduated college a few years ago, and she immediately got a job at she had a marketing degree, right? And she immediately got a job at one of these places. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you right now, 6 months. I mean, and she it's 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, she was like, I'm out of here.
Right. Right.
Because it was a boiler room. Get them closed, transfer them to the next person, and don't worry about it. So yeah, I
I think
think a lot of people have been burned by that.
Yeah, and I think you're actually hearing you talk raises an interesting thought. On the low end, there's this stuff happening with big agencies, and you're right. In both places, they're only thinking about the sales, not
Good
the
argument.
and retention portion of the sales funnel.
Yeah.
It is interesting that middle area of agencies. How big's your agency?
We're not big either.
Smaller agencies like ours that are scrappy and don't
Hmm.
have, I mean, there's more resources now, but traditionally we haven't had big boiler room sales operations. We rely
Sure.
on word of
Yeah.
mouth and
Yep.
delivering results and maybe getting showcased for an award. At the end of the day, it really is largely tied to our results. And so it's interesting that you have these sales organizations missing the guts in the middle, and then smaller guys that can really deliver but don't have the sales operation outside. That
Yeah.
goes back to the original point that I was or the first thing that I said. It was like, or one of the first things I said is like, start building your sales
Scam.
process right now
Yeah.
because it doesn't have to sacrifice quality. You just
Thousand
need to have
percent.
it in place.
Could not agree more. I've been working on getting SOPs in place outside of the sales process, just so I can really make sure that everybody behind me is doing the right thing. They know exactly what to do. They've got it dialed in so that I can be more confident just going out and doing some sales, right? Scaling that sales side of the business. But you got the two ends here that are not doing a great job, then agencies like us that deliver great results, but we don't have sales scalability yet. We'll figure it out.
The SOP thing is interesting. I'm a big believer in SOP. I think they're fantastic for the organization. At the same time, SOPs can become the death of larger organizations. And also the smaller guys, they sign up for a course and we've given you SOPs on how to deliver on local SEO. It's rigid and formulaic. The advantage of being agencies our size is that you've got people that can follow an SOP, but there's also ownership there.
They
They're
can
smart
think.
enough there and it's small enough and invested so it doesn't become formulaic. It becomes more like a backbone of what you're going to do, you
Yeah,
know?
100. Couldn't agree with you more. That actually reminded me of a question I wanted to ask you earlier. You were talking about your team gets embedded with your clients, which I love. They need to follow SOPs, but also do a lot of the thinking. Is there anything specific you do that like helps your team, stay lean, stay agile, but also be able to take care of whatever might come their way from a client?
I think it comes down to culture. As long as people know what they're doing, I think it really
Hmm.
does come down to culture a lot. And the culture I try to cultivate is why I left a big agency. There's a reason I haven't grown to a big agency. I don't want to work in that environment. I did my time and there are major disadvantages. I don't want to live that way. That's part of why we're getting into this agency. And part of those cultural things I really dislike in a bigger agency, that feeling of, well, I got my job, you got your job is not my job. That the whole not my
Right.
job thing.
Yeah.
That's part of what I talk with people about when we're looking to hire. Not my job doesn't exist in this agency. We're small. Everybody's got to wear different hats. That's part of the joy. You don't just do your time and trudge out. You actually get to show up all of it's your job. You're invested in it. You're invested in the outcome. You take ownership of it. That's the other thing. I talk about ownership. There is no not my job. It's all my job. I talk about being scrappy, not combative. For me, being scrappy is how do we get maximum value for
Right.
the resources we've got? That involves being clever. And that again, that's where I come back to like enjoy your job. And that part of the culture is like I want you loving your job. I was driven to therapy by working in a big agency. Here, you get to actually own and love your job. If you own it, you have the opportunity to be creative about it. You can sit there and
Yep.
be like, hey, I'm seeing this, and that's not my job, but I see this going on. This is an opportunity. And
Mhm.
I love when project managers do that, when developers do that, when everybody's kind of has that mentality of like, we're all just in this to do great stuff and to see results. That inspires creativity and excitement, and it goes from there. When you cultivate that environment, you do have to worry about scope creep because the client
Mhm.
says, "We want to do this," and we're like, "Great, let's go do it now." We've had to do a lot of learning culturally. Let's make sure we're setting healthy boundaries with the clients and helping them
Sure.
understand what they're getting into. We'll figure it out. We'll have fun doing it and deliver it, but we got to make sure you actually want it and you want to pay for it.
Right.
And
I couldn't agree more. Sounds like you put a lot of energy into building the right culture. A lot of it comes down to hiring the right people, getting the right attitudes, putting them in spots where they can succeed. That's a business part we don't all have figured out when we start our agencies. It takes time to get there and figure that out. So is there any advice you would have to an agency owner on maybe how they can develop that? Did you read a book on it? Were you just really kind of aware of what was happening because you had been at a bigger agency?
yeah, I should be prepared for what books to read to get ramped up. In terms of creating the culture, in the very beginning of the agency, I operated similarly to my big agency job because that was all I knew. I arrived at a point where I was getting unhappy with my own business and how like working in that, and I'm like, that's crazy. Like if I don't like my business,
I
I'm the owner.
built
I get
myself a job here.
it started with personal experimentation, setting boundaries. I didn't get into this to work weekends. So I'm going to start clawing back my weekends and see
Yep.
what happens. The world didn't end. So it was okay. What's the next thing that
Right.
fits with me? And there was that. So I guess my advice would be is like really get in touch with yourself and like what is the world what's the environment you want to create. And it has to start with you. Every organization that worked with the leadership filters down, make sure you're clear about what you want your environment to be. Once you've got that in place, you can then start looking for the people that fit with that. The clearer you get, the more you can talk using the words and stories that matter to you, and that I think starts to self-select the people who respond and who are a good fit. The other
Yeah.
thing that I would advise is particularly when it comes to hiring people is absolutely listen to your gut. If there is a single red flag, don't convince yourself that this
Yeah.
person is going to be a good fit
Yeah.
eventually or they've got the potential. It's like dating, like getting into relationships. You're not going to fix anybody. That's
Right.
not going to be people are going to grow. That's an exciting thing
Sure.
and to be a part of. And I love mentoring. Another part of the environment and ages I want to create is that mentor mentee back and forth. I want to learn from them too. That's the best arrangement. So, but yeah, if you're getting into a relationship with someone, you people can learn together, but you're not going to
Yeah.
change. And if it's not going to fit, walk.
I couldn't agree more. When you know it's not going to be a fit, walk away. Forget the dollars. When you're first starting, if it's a client that potentially has a lot of money is going to get you going, I understand the allure, but trust me, when you get on the other end of that contract, you're going to be like, man, I wish I didn't take that one.
I love that
You
you
know,
brought the clients into it because you're right. I mean, it works. That's applicable for the internal team. If there's any, you don't even need to know what the red flag is, but if there's a
yep,
red flag, just trust
yeah,
your intuition. With clients, that's been a painful lesson. I've had to learn. There's lots of times where the money's good and I
hmm
think I can make this work. And every time it has
yeah,
cost me more than I've made. It's not
yeah.
worth it.
Getting really clear about what you want to build for yourself is mission critical. I'm glad you brought that up. It reminded me of a quote when I was first starting my agency, and I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of the guy who said the quote, but it was, I don't believe in circumstances. People who succeed create their own circumstances. And I was like, oh, okay. And like that's what really got me triggered to be like, well, what am I looking for here? What do I want to create? The way you explained it was perfect. Like and it's going to be iterative, right? You're not going to sit down in one session and figure it all out, but staying on top of that and staying clear is key to success in running an
Yeah.
agency.
It's getting your reps right. Like a pitch, you're the
Yep.
first times you start doing the pitch, it's going to feel weird and awkward. And then it starts finding its way and gets
Hmm.
to a thing that you can start owning and really feel, connected to and all of that. Same with the environment. Like there will be awkward things, there will be missteps, but the more you keep at it, trying to achieve clarity, questioning, learning, you'll find your way.
Yep. Love it. I have one last question. Is there a mindset or a trend agency owners should be paying attention to right now?
Great question. Let's talk mindset. One of the most interesting books I've read is Nonviolent Communication. I can't remember the guy's name that wrote it. It's not about web design, it's not about sales, it's not about anything about that. It's about interpersonal communication. But one of the things that's really interesting with his stuff is his premise is that everybody when they are communicating is expressing a need. There is something that they will not be communicating unless there is a need being expressed. And too often people are not listening to what a person needs. They might be listening to specific words. They want to litigate specific words that were used, and
Right.
they're not listening to what the needs are. And this has been I've really worked at adopting this approach for personal life as well as business. When I'm focusing on what they're saying, it's not what I think they need. It's what they think they need. When I repeat it back, I hear you saying you need security. You don't feel comfortable with your situation. You're worried. It feels unstable. You need stability and security in your infrastructure. You need to know you can grow without problems. When you're speaking directly to people's needs and they feel heard, you can often help people feel more heard when you're addressing their needs. Sometimes you'll enunciate something they hadn't thought of. Everybody says think about their needs. I encourage people to read the book because it's
Yeah.
about deeper needs, looking beyond the surface and understanding fundamental needs. Is it safety, is security, love, companionship, community? Clients have different needs. Sometimes they need a trusted advisor. Sometimes just to know that sometimes it's that, like I said, the security of their system and that they got a foundation. Sometimes they need to know they're heading in the right direction. If you're able to listen to people's needs and speak to them directly, I find it refocuses me on the right things. And so, yeah, that's what I would toss out, that
I love it.
nonviolent communication.
Book is going to the top of my reading list. This
Right.
has been an incredible conversation. I think I'm going to read the book. We might have to just get together again and talk through the book, you know?
I'm for it. I've had a blast, Brian, and would love to be back anytime. That would be
I
great.
really appreciate it. Is there anything before we wrap this up? Anywhere you want to send people, your website, Twitter?
Yeah, sure. I mean, check us out on angelsmith.net. I've launched a podcast as well. It's called Expansion
Awesome.
Engine, focused on expanding health and fitness organizations and franchise organizations. We talk about stuff that's very universal in there. So mindset and all sorts of things like that as well. So encourage you
Nice.
to check that out on LinkedIn. I'm at the Cosmonaut.
I noticed that.
I was going through a phase and I got wacky and was going by the Cosmonaut because there was a guy at the gym who looked like a straight up cosmonaut.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, sir. And we will talk again soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Brian.